I do not require anyone to check in with me about the work that they're doing on their own, but I love it. I want to hear from my people, especially copy when it's done. But I also love to hear like, hey, just did the 48-hour horror fest last weekend and it was great. And I met some people and we did this here and did that there and maybe won an award, maybe didn't. As an agent, getting all those little nuggets that my actors are keeping busy and staying in the industry, it's absolutely amazing to me how often that will roll into some opportunity that I have to brag about that person a week or two later.
All right. Thank you for joining us on the Down and Cut today. My guest is Robert or Bob Tomazic. Leveraging his engineering and entertainment background, began his talent career in 2009, eventually becoming the acting general manager of his previous agency by 2015 after founding the ZT agency post-pandemic. He has continued to build a strong roster of actors, models, voice talent, solidifying the agency's presence in the Seattle and Portland areas. Please welcome to the Down and Cut, Bob Tomazic.
Woo!
Woo! Now this is
Hello, Joe. Good to see you again.
good to see you. Yes. I want to really highlight. So we've been interviewing on the channel actors, writers, directors, producers, crew, background crew, and this is a highlighting moment for me because you are a talent agent. And it's important for people who want to get into the industry to know what the ins and outs are when it comes to talent agencies because everybody has an opinion, everybody has a perspective, but you might as well hear it from the one who does all the work. And I think
Yes.
that's really important. So thank you for coming on
Yes.
to the Downey Cut.
And
I really appreciate it.
we are a secretive industry, which makes it all that much more interesting to actually hear what the talent agents have to say, because many of them, it's all behind the closed curtains. So I'm happy to be here and share whatever. I'm an open book.
Thank you, Mr. Wizard of Oz. So tell me, Bob, how did your journey start into becoming a talent agent?
Oh man. Well, as you mentioned in your intro, I started out college and afterwards in electrical engineering. I had thought, through high school that was my thing. My dad was an electrical engineer. As I was a kid in high school, I was very math and science oriented, science fair projects. I actually got a scholarship to college based on a science fair project. So I was very into that. I thought that was my path. And so I went to school and got an internship, started working for General Motors, and very, very rapidly hit the brick wall of bureaucracy that happens in the engineering and corporate world. And very quickly decided that that's not the direction I wanted to go. And so I kind of broke and ran the opposite direction as far and fast as I could go and ended up in the bar and nightclub industry. So, owner operator over a number of years of 5 different nightclubs, from live concert venue to like bar restaurant, pub kind of vibe, dance club, nightclub. We've done every kind of event, but ended up doing about a 13-year career in bar nightclubs through those different venues, and eventually ended up here in Seattle in that line of business down in Pioneer Square. And as I got older, got into my 30s at that point in time, mid 30s, the hours and the lifestyle were no longer as appealing to me as they were when I was in my 20s. I wanted to have weekends to do my own thing and not always be tied to the big nights at work. And I wanted to be able to, see daylight, live a normal life, meet normal people that were not just the bar and nightclub people. So I was really, it just felt that urge building up stronger and stronger and stronger. So eventually I had an opportunity. The people that I worked for decided that they were going to sell the club that I was in, and so I could have bounced around and applied at different clubs, and I had some opportunities, but I decided I was going to take that time to break from the industry. And the whole reason I think I was really good as a manager and had managed to go from club to club to club and was always in demand is my real specialty as a manager was marketing. Like, as I was general manager for over 10 of those 13 years, marketing, scheduling, and keeping activities going and getting them out there. So, through those years, social media was new when I was in the bar and nightclub industry. Web marketing, web pages, even text messaging based on websites, like all of that stuff was really new technology, the new Web 2 technology. And that was really my specialty. And so when I got out of the club business, I decided I was going to open my own marketing agency and work with other types of businesses that were looking for creative and up-to-date ways of marketing themselves. And so I started a marketing agency, and I got some different clients. I worked with a company that sold shoes. I worked with a couple nightclubs because that was an easy sell. Um, a company that made truck accessories. I had a number of different things, helping them build websites and SEO and all that stuff. And at one point, one of my clients was a talent agent that wanted to modernize their systems, update their marketing, redo their website, and just felt that it was time to make that leap. And as I worked with her and learned more about the business, the industry fascinated me. Again, it's an industry that's very shrouded in secrecy. And so I really felt like I was on the inside, getting to learn directly from somebody that had been a talent agent for 20 years already. And they had apprenticed under another agent. And the whole thing goes basically like the Sith, pretty much. There's one master and one apprentice. Um, so spending time and really getting to know that business, I realized I'm like, there's a lot of modernization that can be done here. And I got very involved and eventually was offered a full-time position. And I found it to be interesting enough. I decided I was just going to shut down my little marketing company because it was, I'll just say, treading water. I didn't have any great aspirations of becoming an international company. I just was treading water and kind of having fun at that point, living in the daylight instead of the vampire hours. So I jumped on board and I started really learning the industry, the talent business, how it worked here in the Northwest, getting to know people. And over a matter of a couple years, kind of ended up taking over full operations of that talent agency. The owner had some medical issues, and we had got along really well. We trusted each other. I basically just took over the business as she kind of faded into the background, and ended up running that agency for some 13 years.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, it was really neat. So I was head agent. I got to know all the casting directors in the Northwest, the processes, the studios, like all the people that really mattered in the Northwest. I had first name basis relationships with them. I really got to understand actors and what they're looking for and what they're good at and what they're bad at. A whole depth of knowledge in the industry. And so through COVID, there were some rough times. And then the owner that I was working with, I'll just say that she decided that it was time to get out of the business herself. Some family members got involved in that business. We did not get along, and I decided it was time to start ZT Agency. And so long story greatly condensed, ZT Agency started in 2021. And I just immediately rolled over the knowledge that I had from all the years in the past into ZT Agency. And we've been booming ever since, to be honest.
Awesome. Let me ask you something. You said maybe the word secret has come up a couple times. Why
Yeah.
do you? Why is there? Is that is just a bias or a stereotype, or are there really secrets?
Oh, I don't think there are actually secrets. And I think the secret that everybody keeps is that there's not actually secrets, right? Uh, everyone wants it to seem, or the mysticism around talent agents, and
Yeah.
understanding you got the magic, the it thing, all of that. People want to believe that talent agents have some mystic power, but in all actuality, I don't think it is. And that's the secret, is that our job is to build a group of actors on our team and then go sell those actors to the people that we know. And so you can sell more actors by knowing more people. You can sell more actors by having more actors on the team. You can sell more actors by offering great service to the people that you work with. So there's a number of different ways to attack the business, but in the end, I hope nobody takes offense to this. It's a very similar business to having a used car lot, and that is you got to keep the car lot full of cars, or you have nothing to sell. And so that's half the business is getting new cars in, and the other half of the business is selling the cars that are on the lot. The only difference is it's more like leasing the cars that are on the lot.
Yeah.
But that's really the business model, is those two revolving circles. And people want to believe that there's some great mysticism there, or that agents spend lots of their time at red carpet events schmoozing people with martinis. And that is true to a very elite level in Hollywood. But in the vast majority of the country, being a talent agent is working. It's working to work those contacts. Is probably similar to being a real estate agent. Work the contacts that you have, build relationships with people that buy actors regularly, make sure they're thinking of you when the next thing comes in that they need actors for. Make sure everybody's got your contact information. Make sure that your information comes up in the right searches and listings if an out of towner is looking to hire actors. And so it's just a constant churn that way to get those jobs in, and then also getting actors onto your team that are enough to really cover all bases without overwhelming. Because if you have too many people of the same type, none of them get any work, and then they all get frustrated, and then they all leave. And so it's kind of trying to build this nice even balance across your roster, where you've got a handful in every category. So
So then,
that's the secret. The secret is that there's not really any secret. It's
yeah.
just doing the work.
And it sounds like you also have to be available 24/7 yourself, because a casting director could call you up at the last minute and say, "Oh, we need this now," right?
Yeah, I would say it's more like 18/7. I
Okay.
rarely get a call at midnight or 1 a.m. that's urgent, but I definitely get calls at 10 o'clock at night, and definitely get calls at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Mostly email now. But
Yeah.
yeah, and it absolutely is a 7 day a week business. If I logged out on Friday and didn't check my email again until Monday morning, immense amounts of jobs would just blow up or just pass by. There's a ton of
Yeah.
stuff that comes in. One of the biggest times, it's been driving me nuts the last year. One of the biggest hours of the week for new work and new auditions to flood in is between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m. on Friday.
Wow.
And it's
Is that is
because
that because they're filming on the weekend?
no, I think it's just because casting directors are trying to get it out of their inbox, and
I
they
see.
don't necessarily maybe get the final word from their client until end of day on Friday. And so they just push it forward, and they want to get it off their desk and onto someone else's desk before they go home. So they push send and they walk out the door, and then it lands on my desk, and I push send and send it out to all my actors, and so they're at 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30 on Friday night. They're getting their auditions for the weekend that are often due on Monday or Tuesday. But yeah,
Okay.
as an agent, if you're not on those times, you're just going to miss immense amounts of stuff.
So how do you take a vacation?
Um, it's been a lot of years since I've taken a non-working vacation, right?
And I know you just got married, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we didn't take a honeymoon. I did officially on my wedding day not look at my email, but luckily it was a relatively slow weekend that weekend.
Good,
So I
good.
was like, wedding day, not going to look at my email at all. But I was all caught up the night before and jumped back in the morning after. No, I just have a laptop and my phone with me everywhere I go. My phone tells me if something important comes in. So even if I'm on vacation, I'm still checking my phone. And if I need to pop onto my laptop and send some emails or send a submission or something, and my wife knows that. She's very comfortable with the process, knowing that at any point we could be interrupted by a phone call or I got to send a quick email for 5 minutes. And every few hours, I might have to pop back to my laptop and send an email or put something together. But she's used to it. I'm used to it. And that's just kind of how we live now.
So let's talk about the misunderstanding from a lot of the actors where they think, my agent's always reaching out to me last minute. I got to turn this around right away. Can you explain from your side why the urgency is always there all of a sudden last minute?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you know anything about how companies allocate capital, it all makes a little bit more sense. And that is when a company is looking to budget for some sort of an expense, um, advertising campaign generally is what it is. As soon as they approve the expense, they immediately want the result. And that's just how capital allocation works in companies. It's the money's not spent until the day they sign off on it. But the day they sign off on it, they want to be getting a return on their money. And so what happens is that there's long discussions through a long chain of people. And the chain of people starts with the executives at the company. And then that generally goes to an ad agency. And the ad agency generally connects with the production company. And the production company connects with the casting director. And the casting director connects with the agents. And the agents connect with the actor. So you've got this long chain of people. So once the company actually signs off on the budget, all of the information has to travel all the way down this telephone chain and all the way back up. And then when it gets all the way to the top, those executives don't feel the same pressure that everybody all up and down feels. And so the executive, once casting goes out, it's released, the auditions come back, the casting director sends some people to the ad agency, the production company. The production company selects a few and passes it to the ad agency. The ad agency goes, okay, here's our top three. They send them to the executives at the company. And the executives of the company are like, oh, I just can't really decide. I think I'm going to go home and think about this for the weekend. And they're not considering the fact that, production may be starting the following Wednesday and all of this information has to get passed around. They just go, yeah, I'll make my decision when I make my decision. And when they finally do make their decision, then that has to get passed all the way back down the chain. And so by the time that happens, it's 2 days before or 3 days before the shoot when you get booked. It's 4 days before the shoot when the auditions are just going out because somebody waited and waited and waited. That was all the way at the top of the chain. And then everybody else gets stuck in between. And so that's commonly what happened. It's kind of like a slinky. If you
Yeah,
think about the process, and it's that
yeah,
if they wait too long on this end, and those are the executives, they're not the problems of the peons are not their issues, right? But
right.
then when they decide to send the wave has to go all the way down the slinky, and then we get it at the other end. And that's it's very, very common that it happens that way. It's not just that I waited or somebody else waited, but that's just this long, slow communication process that gets condensed very, very rapidly. It seems like 3 or 4 weeks to make a commercial seems like a lot of time, but every time the communication has to go back and forth up and down this chain, they might burn 3, 4, 5 days, and that will crush a couple weeks of time very, very, very quickly.
Yeah. So you would say it's beneficial that if one of your actors gets an audition, for them to do it right away and get it up the chain as fast as possible, so that they have what first dibs, if you will, or that
Yeah.
preference.
When auditions go out, you figure a casting director generally auditions anywhere between 10 to 30, maybe 40 people for a role. And so they put those auditions out. And what generally happens, they put out a deadline. The deadline is, 48 hours out or whatever. And most of the people will wait until the deadline to send their submission, in the 1 hour or 2 hours beforehand. And so the casting director sends everything out and then is sitting there twiddling their thumbs for almost the entire duration of that 48 hours until the deadline. And then they go at the deadline from doing almost nothing to absolutely overwhelmed. And again, if they're against a hard deadline, say they have 40 audition tapes come in, and each audition tape is 2 minutes. Figure if the tape is 2 minutes to watch, that's 80 minutes plus a minute to get between each one. That's so they have hours worth of work just to get through one roll. Now imagine a film where they might have 40 or 50 people auditioning for each for 15 or 20 roles, or a big commercial where they're hiring 12 or 18 actors. They could have, you know, 15 or 20 hours worth of time invested in just watching videos. So what happens is when an actor sends their audition tape significantly early, 1 day or 2 days early, then it's almost always watched both in advance because the casting director wants to gain as much ground as they can until that deadline hits and everybody's tapes come slamming in. They want to get ahead, but it also allows the tape to be watched in a calm and relaxed manner when the casting director's not under the gun after the deadline. And so if you have a really good quality tape and you've submitted maybe a day or 2 days early, that's often your best chance of being viewed first, well received, and remembered. Because once a casting director, the first audition a casting director sees, if it's good, is going to be what every other audition is compared to over the rest of that project. And so it's very easy. You could be the first audition that they watch and end up being the one that they pass on to the client to book for the role because you were the first and you stuck in their head.
Yeah, so that's good advice. What? Let's talk about your arena. When it comes to the Pacific Northwest, I'm sure other agents have different from outside the Seattle area. What is your biggest paycheck or work that comes to you? Is it mostly industrial commercials? I can't even say that right. You know, is it the commercial aspect? Do any films ever come up?
Yeah, so last year was a rough year for film. We had the SAG strike. 2023 had the SAG strike around early in the year. It just shut everything down. All the films. We had a handful, maybe 4 or 5 non-union features that shot last year, but the average for the Northwest is maybe ten films a year. So in 2023, we got knocked down hard because everything that was bigger than a small self-financed indie film got stuck on hold. Now, if you had spent 2, 3, 4 years going through pre-production and getting ready to shoot, and we're like, yeah, we're going to shoot this thing summer of 2023, and all of a sudden the SAG strike knocks you down, you're not just going to walk away. You're going to wait, and you're going to talk to your investors, you're going to talk to your actors, whatever's done as part of the pre-production, and you're just going to freeze it, wait a year, and restart. And so in 2023, at the end of late in the year, I was like, yeah, it was a sucky year for film, but I think it's going to be a big one next year, and it was. So we had 18 or 19 significant feature films, like 90-minute plus feature films shoot in the Northwest in 2024. So it was a huge year for film, almost double. 4 or 5 that were full budget theatrical, which means for an actor, you're like $1,100 a day, like $4,000 a week. That's really, really significant. But when it comes down to it, the vast majority of those, even at $1,100 a day, actors are booking 1 day, 2 days, there's a lot of actors in the Northwest. So in any one given film, if I do well, I might have a couple people in the film. If I don't do well, I might have one or possibly zero. But that's kind of how the film works. So it's the frosting. It's the frosting and the excitement that everybody talks about. Everybody's really pumped up when we have films happening. Everybody gets really excited when they come through. But as an agent, it's not really what we make our living on. Our living is really based on commercial work. So when you say industrial, generally that means training films. Industrials are usually considered work that is not shown publicly, that is used internally, training. Really every version of training that you can imagine, but training. I just before this interview started, I had a call with an internal training video from a large medical nonprofit organization that is doing training films every year, new training film for doctors to help them with the way they interface with patients. And it's a neat topic. It's not medical information. It's not what they would learn in school. It's actually something really helpful. It's how you interface better with the families that you're dealing with when the families are dealing with tragic information. I'm like, that's a great thing. That kind of stuff is very common. Uh, Google, Meta, all of those companies have 100 different departments, and each one of those departments constantly needs new training films about this and that. And so that's the industrial side. And there's a fairly large amount out there. But because industrials are not used publicly, the rates tend to be a lot lower, right? So as an actor, maybe you're getting $500 a day, or maybe you're getting $900 a day if there's heavy script or teleprompter for an industrial, but it generally isn't a big financial thing. Maybe by the day it's a good financial thing, but it's not something you can make a living on. And then the last is commercial. And commercial work, people mix up that commercial work is specifically television commercials. And obviously, there's only so many television commercials that you can make until your channels are all commercials, which they feel like they are these days. But commercial work is actually anything that is made for commerce, made to make money for a business. So that all of a sudden explodes into this giant category that's broadcast commercials, but it's also streaming videos, it's pop-up videos, it's pre-roll that runs before the YouTube video you're trying to watch, social media videos, TikTok videos, all of that stuff fits in this commercial category. So it's this huge category. And as an actor, you get paid on two sides. And I just had this conversation with a new producer this morning. You get paid for the work that you do, for the hours that you work. And that's what we call the session rate. And that's like with an industrial, you only get the session rate because your video is only going to be seen by a very small number of people. Whereas on the other side, in commercial work, there is also what we call usage. Usage is the right to use your image publicly for the pursuit of profit for the company. And that has value, and that value is oftentimes more than the value of the work that you actually did for the 8 hours or 10-hour day that you put in doing that commercial work. So a lot of times you see commercial jobs where the rates will say like $800 session plus $1,200 usage or $2,500 usage. As things get bigger, national commercials, the biggest national commercial that I've done, one commercial ended up being out around almost $40,000.
Wow.
One actor, one commercial, 1 day shoot. And over the course of, I think it was 15 months is the period that SAG allows them to use it. They ended up getting almost $40,000 worth of usage. And so that's called, there's residuals, which is when you get paid after it's used, but you get paid by the use. And then there's buyouts, which just is a bulk purchase of usage, a one-time upfront bulk purchase.
I
So,
know
but yeah, the biggest single commercial I've seen ended up being around $40,000, and so the numbers can vary wildly all over the map.
back in the day, residuals was kind of the coin word. Is that still a popular process today?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, residuals is basically the official term for SAG jobs that are paid specifically by the use, where the ad agency runs the spot first and then says, okay, this is where we run it, and here's your pennies for each time that the commercial ran.
Yeah.
So that is the official version of, so you have buyouts and residuals.
I was just wondering if the industry was leaning more towards the buyout nowadays versus going residual.
It's very much SAG versus non-union. Um,
Okay. So if
Calculating
you're
residuals is a very intense bureaucratic process. SAG has the tools to do that, and so that's what SAG does. But no normal person, no five-person talent or five-person ad agency, couple creative guys working away in a studio designing cool stuff, they do not have the technology to track residual usage in that way, and so they
right.
oftentimes use buyouts, and non-union work will use a flat buyout, union work uses residuals.
Talking to a director, the director had said to me, "Yeah, I was doing a lot of casting." I said, "Do you cast locally?" He goes, "Yeah, I go through the agents, but a lot of the actors don't have reels today," and he thought that was a problem. But I
Gotcha.
noticed that because of the pandemic, that the fact that people are auditioning more on their phones and through the internet, they don't have to go to a location. That has become much more valuable than a reel.
Yeah, I
So
can.
how has that shifted?
Well, what happened? We had it happen twice. So you had it happen in the voiceover world before the pandemic, and then you had it happen in after the pandemic on the on-camera world. So what happened is back in the 2000s ish, the USB microphone was really invented, right? Got beyond little headset mics with terrible sound, and all of a sudden you have like the blue snowball microphone, like a quality microphone you could just plug into your computer. And for many, many, many years, when an audio studio was doing casting, they just had all the voice talent just come into the audio studio and record in the booth. Just like casting directors brought humans into their physical studio to record auditions in the studio. And then you had this invention of the USB microphone, and now all of a sudden, actors could record their auditions from their computer at home and send them in instead of having to drive into the studio. And so you had this crossover where voiceover talent in the say, 2005, every voiceover talent, the first thing you had to have was your demo that showed this is who I am. So the demos got you the audition, then you went into the studio to audition because that requires time and labor. And if you think about it, it's studio time. And studio time is expensive. So for a studio to do a casting and have an engineer in the studio recording actors all day long, that's an expensive process. So they would use demos to narrow that down. You start with a pool of 500 voice actors, you listen to demos, and then you narrow that down and you bring, say, 25 of them into the studio, you record auditions, and then you narrow that down from those recordings to the one that you're going to book for the job. And so that, as that happened, you started to get more and more people that were able to say, don't worry, I'm just going to email you in my recorded audition. I don't need to come into the studio. And so that had this crossover where the number of people coming into the studio went down, the number of people that were sending auditions in voiceover went up, to the point that they just cut out the studio altogether. Now they no longer need the demos, because the demo in the audio world was what got you the audition in the studio, right? And
Yep.
so we don't need that anymore. Now they just send out the script. Everybody reads the script, records it, and sends it in. So that was already in place pre 2020, right? Pre pandemic. That was the way that the whole audio voiceover world works, especially as bandwidth got bigger and bigger. And, you were able to transmit in 2005, even attaching an MP3 file and sending it was kind of a long, slow process. But
Yeah.
by 2020, it's like, whatever, zippity doo dah, and sending stuff around. So that was already in place. That model had already been worked out. Then we hit the pandemic. So before pandemic, you had again casting directors that were using physical studio space, labor, camera people, expensive equipment to record auditions. So actors did everything in their power to have a reel. The reel would be part of their upfront submission. A casting director says, "Hey, I need a 25 to 30-year-old Hispanic female. Let me see what you got." And we send photos and reels. And then the people that look like the best choices would get scheduled to come in for auditions in studio. Right. So now we hit the pandemic and all of a sudden it becomes self-tape, right? Tape your audition at home and send it in. Well, same thing as voiceover is that there's no need for the reel when you already are able to tape with your cell phone at home and send it in. And now that that's become incredibly acceptable, people are fine with cell phone video. Cell phones got better and people's standards got, I'm not going to say worse because there are some spectacular cameras on phones these days. So the only thing that really separates the expensive camera from a cell phone camera is the angle of the lens. Like the lenses are fixed on cell phones and they can be kind of wide angle and you get a little distortion and it just feels like a cell phone. And that's really the only difference. Everything else, cell phones do amazing. They do pretty darn good audio most of the time too. And so your standards changed a little bit, and casting directors went through this 2 or 3 year process of just looking at self tapes day after day for every project they got. And then we went, okay, pandemic's over. You can go do whatever you want. And they said, do I really want to schedule a studio and bring 50 people in and sit in a room and hire a camera person and hire a reader and do all of this costly work? Or do I just want to accept self tapes? And it turns out self tapes are the way to go. And so now, since 2020, 2020 was just kind of a dead halt, but 2021 is where everything really kicked off in self tapes. And now that that process is refined and that almost every actor that's in the business is able to film viable self tapes, they no longer feel the need to do in-person auditions, which means their, how do I say it, their standards, their selectivity on who gets to audition for each project is much lower. There's a big difference between scheduling, say, 10 people for each role to come in and audition in a studio versus 20 or 30 for each role to send in a self tape. So more people get more auditions that they record at home and send in, and the casting directors do less work for it. But it eliminated the need for the reel because the reel was part of the process that got you the audition. And now there's really no need for it. So I have not recommended or pushed anyone to work on a reel for a long time. There's another tie-in with that that's unrelated to the self-taping, and that is in markets where there's a ton of independent film, there's a ton of episodic work. A lot of actors are getting on camera in ways that they can get copies of the material back. In our market, a lot of the commercial work that's done and a lot of the industrial work, all of the industrial work, you can never ever get your hands on copy. And so what we find is that for every actor that does, say, 10 gigs, um, they might only be able to get copy of one or two. And of those one or two, it's common that maybe the footage isn't something that, maybe they're not the lead character. Maybe they're a, they've got paid as a principal, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're not person speaking in the scene, and you don't really want to put that stuff in your reel. So what you end up with is that you have to do so many commercial jobs to get just 30 seconds or 60 seconds of
Yeah.
usable material for a reel that most people just can't get there. By the time they have enough material for a reel, it's strung out over 6 years of acting. And so, like, it's very difficult to get material for a reel if you don't do a ton of indie film. And there's not a big call for having reels. There's no demand for them. And so they just are kind of, in my opinion, they're kind of going out of style.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely a trend. I can relate. I've done commercials for Microsoft. I've done commercials for Nintendo. And, the closest thing I heard is people that work there going, "Hey, Joe, I think I saw you
Yeah.
in one of our internal commercials." I'm like,
Yeah.
was it good? Is there a way you can send it to me? Because I never saw it. I never saw
Yep.
any of them. So I'm just
So
like,
much
okay.
of that stuff just disappears into
Yeah.
the ether and you just never ever see it. I've had ones also that um like I saw on broadcast, like I was out somewhere like at the gym and there's a TV and I see one of my actors on the TV, but there's no way to get a copy of it because what am I going to you reach out to Como and say, could you send me a copy of this commercial? And I can't find it. So a
Yeah.
lot of reasons that it's very difficult to get that stuff.
Yeah. We're going to start diving into the actors aspect. First, I want to ask you, in your observation, in your experience of working in all these talent agencies, working with all these actors, you're going to love this one. What makes a successful actor a good actor?
Oh man. So there's a lot of ways to come at this. And the majority of it is how you define success. There's people that would define success by fame and glory, by booking famous projects, by being known. Um, a lot of that, it's very, very difficult. And I mean like top 0.1% to succeed at that level, at like a Hollywood level in the Northwest. You almost invariably have to leave the Northwest once you hit a certain ceiling. And so I'm going to define success by just actors that book work regularly. And every actor is different. I have actors that book film but struggle to book commercial work. I have actors that book tons of commercial work but struggle to book film. Different acting styles, different looks. I have actors that book print and non-speaking work but are scared to death of doing anything with script. So it's kind of all over the map. But in general, it's just actors that book work regularly. Now, if that's how you define success, how do you get there? And I'm going to say, in my experience, it's not any one specific thing, but it is an overall level of commitment to the industry. It is commitment to making yourself available. It's commitment to making acting, auditioning, and acting work a priority over the other things you have going on in your life. It's a commitment to making your communications quickly. We talked earlier about the time frame uh, on acting work, and it's so often is we catch the whiplash end of the slinky where things are due in just hours, and it's crazy because we're on the end of such a long chain. So communication, rapid communication is incredibly important. And then also commitment to improving your skills, not getting rusty. They say if you don't, if you're not exercising your skill, you're losing it. It's exactly the same as fitness in that way. If you're not building muscle, you're losing muscle. If you're not building acting skill, you're losing your acting skill. You're getting rusty. So there's a commitment to all these different things that you have to hold as a priority. And the problem is that acting, especially the agent side of acting, is really jerky. It's very, very start, stop, uh, wait, start, stop, wait. Don't hear anything for weeks on end. And then all of a sudden, bang, 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 like rapid fire stuff. And so a lot of people, it's very, very easy, especially I've always said like high school is the hardest time to stay in the acting world because everything you're doing in your outside life wants your full attention. If you're in sports, they want your full attention. Your school, your teachers, your tests, they want your full attention. And school and sports work hand in hand, right? If you're in any outside thing like dance or organization like that, they want everything you have to give and all of your money outside of that world. And then you get to this weird acting thing with an agent, like high school sophomore, you're 16 and you have an agent that you don't hear from for weeks on end. And then you're like, well, I'm not hearing from my agent, so I'll get involved in this other stuff. And then all of a sudden on Friday, it's like, hey, you've got an audition for this huge thing. It shoots next Thursday. And they're, oh, well, I've got a volleyball game on Thursday and I've got practice for this and I've got all these things going on because you get sucked into them.
Yeah.
It's okay to do all those other things in your life. It's okay to have hobbies and like trips. And, everybody we have is day jobs and families. Nobody just sits at home waiting for acting work to come in. But the successful people they schedule their lives in a way that when the acting job comes in, it can be notched up as a priority above everything else. That they go, you know what? Our family was planning on taking a vacation. If we book this job, we'll bump the vacation off because it's a priority. If we were planning on doing a certain thing, we will move those plans if we book the job. And it's always an if. You never know if you're going to book the job, and you don't have to cancel your plans until you actually book the job. But you always have to be willing to keep it as the top priority. We will get the audition done. We will communicate immediately as soon as we get the auditions in. And those that keep that commitment level of making acting their top priority are very successful. Whether they fill their life with other things or they don't, as long as you're committed to keeping it a top priority. Like I said, all those different aspects of the actual work to do, auditions, bookings, communications, but also keeping your skills from getting rusty and self-motivating on all those things. So that would be my key to success, is being committed to making acting your top priority, but it doesn't have to be your only priority. It just needs to, when it is a thing, it needs to be the number one thing. If you don't do that, you will absolutely lose every possible opportunity and find that you never book anything.
There are actors within the industry here that do a lot of like 48-hour film festivals, do independent films. And I think that's their way of not becoming rusty.
Yeah.
And keeping motivated and exercising.
Yeah.
Do you require for your actors to check in with you to make sure that it's okay to do these other projects?
I do not require anyone to check in with me about the work that they're doing on their own, but I love it. I want to hear from my people, especially copy when it's done. But I also love to hear like, hey, just did the 48-hour horror fest last weekend and it was great. And I met some people and we did this here and did that there and maybe won an award, maybe didn't. As an agent, getting all those little nuggets that my actors are keeping busy and staying in the industry, it's absolutely amazing to me how often that will roll into some opportunity that I have to brag about that person a week or two later. When I get in a job or I'm talking to a producer on the phone and they're describing some role that they need, I'm like, oh my God, I've got someone that's fantastic. And, they just did this 48-hour horror thing and They had a hammer in that too. So it's perfect for this Lowe's commercial because they have a hammer, whatever. But it's really
Yeah.
weird how often I'm able to segue little nuggets of, I did this last weekend. I took this class. I worked with this person. I networked at this event into something to try to get them further work. So, and that's always been almost odd to me how often that stuff happens. But I love it because it also keeps each one of those actors fresh and in the front of my mind. When I don't hear from an actor at all for long periods of time, subconsciously I'm thinking that they're just not really busy. Or they're not really interested. They're just waiting for me to do the work
Right.
rather than going out and doing the work. So the ones that go out and do the work on their own and then let me know, those are the ones that are generally going to be in the front of my mind. Those are the ones that I know that are fresh too, that are raring and tearing to go. So those tend to be the people that when I have any say in the matter, which sometimes agents do have a little bit of flexibility, like we would like any one of these three actors and we can only book one. Which one are you going to get booked? The one that just told you all about their great experience at the 48-hour film fest, or the two that you haven't heard from for 6 months?
Right.
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 So it's absolutely, I love it when my actors go out and find work on their own. The recommendation is, if it's for art, go out, do it, and tell me about it after the fact. And art being indie film, music videos, student projects, art projects, mixed media stuff. Go do it. It's fun. It's a great experience. It's great networking, and it just gets you more time in front of the camera. If it is for commerce, i.e., a business is paying for it or a business will have their name on it, then I do ask that people run that by me first. You see a casting on Facebook and you go, oh, that sounds interesting, or it's Craigslist, or somebody knows somebody, or whatever. It's always best to just run that past your agent first, because sometimes we already have an in with the production company. Sometimes we're already working on the same project that you heard about and we're already connected and in. Sometimes we have an opportunity for, say, an introduction, where if you're being requested to audition for a project, by passing that on to me, we could potentially open that whole project up to other people in the agency, which, if you're the one that found the audition and worked your way in, doesn't always sound that great till you realize everybody else is doing it too, and that's what's putting opportunities on your plate. So when you play the team game, it's better for everybody. Um, and last, there are definitely times out there where the rates being offered for commercial type work in independent castings, Facebook and Craigslist and call boards, are way, way below what we would consider industry standard. And when you submit an audition to somebody that's offering significantly less than industry standard, you're undercutting your own rate. Because as an agent, it's impossible for me to get a standard, reasonable, fair rate from a business once they've done the casting on their own and gotten people to work for a fraction of that. Like, if they're willing to pay $250 and they get 50 actors to audition for a role for a commercial, and we look at it and go, well, that should be a $1,200 role, they're never going to come back and pay $1,200 if last year they hired a bunch of actors at $250. So run it by your agent first. Don't submit on stuff that is significantly underpaid, because that is a race to zero for all actors when actors work for really, really, really cheap. Unless they're really, really, really bad, or you actively go out and sabotage the shoot. Not that I would ever recommend that, but I have had stories of people, businesses underpaying their talent and getting what they deserved by hiring from the bottom of the barrel of actors that were willing to work for really, really cheap, and then realizing, holy cow, this was a terrible idea. We should
Yeah.
probably hire professionals next time and pay the money.
Yeah. Which is probably why they were posting in those forums and stuff on the
Yeah,
side, right? Versus going through an
yeah,
agent. What
yeah.
about
Trying
okay,
to
so
get the bottom of the barrel. Yeah.
that's for commerce projects.
Yes.
What about independent film that would pay you like, $200 a day? Do you want them to run that by you as well?
Uh like I said, it's always great to get that notification if it's paid and you want. So every agent has a different take on this. For me, I only expect a commission, meaning active involvement in the job, if I'm the one that got you the job. I have no expectations of being paid from anything that you booked on your own, whether it's film, commercial, theater, doesn't matter. I have no expectations of that. So if you book a film on your own and it's $200 a day or something like that, great. I'd love to hear about it. Just again, tell me about your character. Tell me about your day on set. Tell me if you met any other great actors. Recruit for me. Bring me some of the actors from that shoot onto my team, right? There are lots
Yeah.
of ways to help. But I'm not expecting any kind of a commission. I just want to know. Um, I completely lost my train of thought on that.
No, it's all good because I know there's some agents out there that the rumorville is they want to
Mm,
squeeze out, the
yeah,
percentage of whatever you're doing on your own as well.
yeah. Oh, there's different takes. So that's my take. There are other agents that sign contract that they will take a commission on every aspect of your acting career. So if you do theater and get paid for it, they want a commission. If you book indie film and get paid for it, they want a commission. And then they want a commission for the work that they book you. I don't work that way. I love it when people go out. It makes my job easier when my own actors go out and book themselves work, and I can give you a pat on the back. And honestly, a commission on a $200 a day indie film is not really worth the time and energy anyways. So I'm like, go out and do it and I will support you. I have had actors that found something that was bigger and they formally asked for like consulting, like, can I bring you in as my official agent on this project because I want negotiations, I want to bring this rate up, or I want you to study the contract. And so I will occasionally, when specifically asked, formally come on to rep somebody for a project and then take a commission on that, but only when requested if the job didn't come from me. And so there's agents all over the scale, from the I want 20% of your entire acting career all the way to the I only take a commission from what I actually book you. And I'm on this end.
And we appreciate that. When I first started acting, there's some shady agencies out there, and I've run into one, and
Yes.
it was the deal of you pay me $300, and we're gonna take some headshots for you, and we're gonna start casting you. And I never got a job, and I did pay the $300, and I got these really crappy headshots.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you feel about that aspect of the industry?
Well, um, there is everything from the shadiest of the shady, what everyone would say is a scam, all the way to on a pretty linear scale, all the way to very well intentioned. Not always the best execution, but very well intentioned, right? The problem that new people often don't realize is that becoming an actor is a complete, humongous set of skills, from the actual acting to looking at photos and recognizing what are the positive aspects of your face that you need to bring out, what wardrobe, style choices, character choices in acting and training. There's the actual training itself. There's the business training of how the business works. There's the self-tape training, which is basically, so you've got to be a filmmaker and you've got to be an actor. There's an incredibly broad skill set that you need to have just to step foot into the acting world and be remotely effective. And I don't even mean successful. I just mean able to do what you're asked to do, and that is to submit self-tapes and all. So there's this huge skill set. So if you're a beginning actor and you don't already have the skill set, it is absolutely understandable that you need to go out and you need to get that skill set from somewhere. And this is where the problem comes in. And that is that there are agents out there that kind of offer those services as part of a package with good intentions. There are agents out there that have no intentions of actually getting you work at all and just put it out there to make money. There are agents that basically just run a mediocre school and take photos for the income and never actually even try to get their talent any work. So there's people all over the scale. The best, in my opinion, the best person for each one of those jobs is going to be a specialist in each area. So to learn acting, you work with an acting coach. To get headshots, you work with not just a photographer, but a headshot for actors specific photographer. You know, if you want a stylist that specializes in commercial work, you talk to different hairstylists and you get one and say, I want to look commercial. Like I want to look like the people on TV. Um, so there's a whole bunch of specialists you can work with. Of course, that is also the most time consuming and most expensive way to come at the acting business is looking for working with a specialist in every single area that you want to work in. So there's this pull of, well, this person says they've got a complete package in this for this much money, I can do it. And just be very careful. There are absolutely people with no intentions of doing anything but taking your money. And then there's people out there that are in the middle. There's people out there that are well intentioned that really want to get you started, but don't, may or may not. And it's very hard to tell as a beginner. And then, you know, I just jumped, I'm off that scale. The only thing I do is agent. I don't do photography. I don't teach classes. I don't coach actors. I don't. The only thing that I make my income from is booking my actors' jobs. At the same time, that also means I expect my actors to go out and learn the skills necessary. The hardest part of this is that it's hard. It is as competitive as sports. And you could look at it like professional sports, professional actors, probably similar numbers of people out there in the NBA, NFL as there are Hollywood actors, you know, and they're very equivalent. People that are able to make a large living and get rich off of being the best of the best of the best in the world. Very similar. You look at an athlete and no one thinks, oh, they just took an 8-week class and then tried out for the Chicago Bulls and got in. Like it takes years and years of hard work and practicing every single aspect of whatever that profession is. And acting is exactly the same way. It's very competitive. And if you want to compete at a local 3-on-3 down at the park level, then you can do that without having to do a lot of training. Take a class, know the rules, you're good to go. Probably lose most of the time, but at least you know the rules and get to play the game. If you want to compete at a professional level or a tournament level, which is where we're at as an agent, you know, then you got to know your stuff. You got to be pretty good. You got to be better than hundreds of other people in the market. And if you want to compete at a Hollywood level, you need to be better than tens of thousands of other people in a much larger market. So big fish in a small pond, or small fish in a big pond, or big fish in a big pond. You kind of get to choose where you want to be, but the competition level is equal to where you want to be.
What's your perspective on industry trends? As an example, I'll use myself as an example. When Jet Li was real popular, there was a lot of martial art movies, and everyone's like, "Hey, we need an Asian. We got to find an Asian. We need an Asian." How do you feel about that type of trend where you have people like sometimes it's African Americans that are popular and they're casting a lot of African Americans, or it's plus size that are looking for a lot of people who are plus size. Like, how do you maneuver that, and how does that structured? And what's your advice for actors in that arena?
Ooh, well, everything is a style, right? There's fashion trends, and our clothing fashion trends tend to move a lot faster than our on-screen trends. But they're definitely trends that come and go. When I started in the agent business, there was a lot of work for blue-eyed, blonde-haired Caucasians, and then as the politics of the world kind of changed, and we had some events in Hollywood that made some triggers, it started to slide the other direction, and it's been a long slow slide. And the past few years have been a never ending trend of different words to say anything but white, basically. I mean, we've gone through like every 2 years, there's a new word for it, but the end result, if you are a non-Caucasian, I'll just say non-Caucasian because it doesn't matter. Now is a really great time to be in the acting business, whether you're Asian, East Indian. I know that there's not many like Arab talent, but because when I see a casting for them, it's like desperation. It's just they're absolutely desperate when they need to cast an Arab talent, Mediterranean look. It's very hard to find. African American, tons of work, and so right now it's just a supply and demand readjustment, and that is that if you go back maybe 15 years. Probably 90% of the represented actors were Caucasian, and 10% was a mix of everything else. In the roles coming in, they're much less specific about whether we want specifically Caucasian. That's kind of rare unless they're matching families. Generally,
Sure.
it's kind of like, well, we're interested in whoever. But it was rare 15 years ago to see roles that were specifically designated for ethnic minority talent. And now that is completely reversed. The vast majority of roles are designated specifically for ethnic minority talent, whether it be one specific ethnic minority or a general anything but white. And then there is a lot of roles that are open to whoever, whatever. And again, the only time that you have a specific call out for Caucasian is when it's related to a family or related to a story, like in a film where it has to be that way for the film to make sense.
Sure.
And so that's kind of where we're at now. Commercial work is really common. And again, the talent pool is adjusting. It's slowly swinging as the demand changes, the supply slowly changes behind it. And so for the last 4, 5, 6 years, I've been really aggressively looking to recruit more talent of, again, every ethnic minority, African American, Asian, Hispanic. Bring them on, bring them on, bring them on. Because I know there's a demand that outpaces the supply. And it has been that way for a long time. Is it going to top out? Probably. I'm imagining I probably is topped out in terms of the demand. I can't imagine we're going to get much more demand, but right now the demand is bigger than the supply. And so if you're in one of those categories, you're in a very great position because you have low competition for a lot of roles. If you are a Caucasian talent, you have high competition for less roles. And Caucasians are generally kind of fading out of the business. They're dropping because they're just not booking as much as they were. And so
Yeah.
slowly through attrition, we're losing Caucasian talent out of the market and we're gaining all the other minority talent. And so it's just rebalancing over time. And I think it's probably a 5 to 10 year swing.
Mhm.
5 years ago, if you were African American, I have some African American talent that just crushed. I mean, 5 years ago, my African American and some of my Asian talent were like the top 10 bookers on my roster. Like by
Yeah.
by dollar and number of jobs, were all ethnic minority talent
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
curve was way out of whack, and now
What's
it's
that?
slowly balancing.
I was thinking of an Asian movie, but I can't. I can't remember. Um, but I do see the trend of like ton of Asian movies coming up, and visiting you there, and it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
What's your recommendation about physicality, fitness? You had talked about fitness before this, trying
Yeah.
to get back into shape. Is it recommended that actors are in shape?
Yeah. I actually have an article on my website about this, that it's really my number one, beyond knowing the actual skills necessary to function in the industry. The number one recommendation beyond that, it's not just be fit, it's make fitness part of your life. Right? You don't say, I'm working out because I want to be an actor and I need to lose weight, or I'm working out because I want to do this. It's, I'm working out because that's part of who I am. When you get to be one of those people, the whole working out part is so much easier. I am a fit person. And if you live like a fit person, then your acting career is much, much easier. And that, again, I'm glad we just went through the supply and demand curve, because the supply and demand curve for fit and a fit people versus average people versus overweight people is also all an S curve shape, right?
Yeah.
So most roles, and I just say most, 80%, we'll use the 80-20 rule. 80% of rules are looking for somebody that is generally, they say average, but average for television is what we would consider fit and attractive in real life, right? Not model, bombshell, six pack, but just generally looks appealing to most people around them. And that's about 80% of the roles. So if you are anywhere between the far end of extremely fit, like marathon runners, six pack abs fit, all the way to just generally fit or average, if you're anywhere in here, you're a good fit for 80% of the work that comes in for your age and ethnicity. But as you start to fall into this overweight to obese range, and you no longer are in what we consider aspirational. So fit and attractive, we also use the term aspiration. Aspirational was a big term like in the 90s and 2000s. It's not said very often, but I think it's a very fitting term for what we're talking about. Aspirational talent, that people aspire to be like them. When you're not in that, when you're in the overweight to extremely overweight category, now you are competing for 20% of the roles that are out there. The 20% of the roles that are like, we want somebody that is intentionally overweight, intentionally casting a person that looks out of shape. And so you've got a 4-to-1 ratio there that
Yeah.
it makes it just really difficult to book. So in one, if you're aspirational, if fitness is part of your world, then you've got 4 roles coming in. If you are in the overweight category, not fit, you've got 1 role coming in for the same amount of time frame. So yeah, I absolutely suggest that actors make being fit all the time part of it. There's also this weird belief that I can lose weight if they need me to lose weight.
Right.
And actors somehow, again, it goes back to the time frames. There
Yeah.
is never going to be a time where you get booked for a role and you have time to lose 20 pounds. And there's never going to be a time that somebody is going to risk the money they're spending to finance a film on one actor losing 20 pounds. They will always cast the person that looks today just like what they want them to look like when they start shooting. So whether they start shooting tomorrow or they start shooting 2 months from now, you need to look today like what they're looking for. So it's not a matter of get in shape, it's a matter of be in shape all the time. And that will maximize your opportunity. So having your skill, having your availability, your commitment, like I talked about earlier, rapid communication, auditioning for every project you can, networking, and doing work on your own, the indie films, the horror 48-hour horror festivals, all of that stuff combines together to maximize your opportunities. And that's really the game as an actor with an agent. Maximize your opportunities. You get as many opportunities as possible, and that goes all the way back to the beginning of my career in engineering. My game is the math. Maximize the opportunities, and people will be successful. Anything that you do that is a detriment to the opportunities, that reduces the opportunities you have as an actor, is going to absolutely kill your game.
What strategies do you employ to keep your talent roster diverse and inclusive? Do you usually go out and look for people, or is it more of a word of mouth?
I do recruit to a small extent. Honestly, I work from home, so most of my traveling in the world is at the gym. And so really the only place that I do some very minor, very gentle recruiting is if I see somebody at the gym that I think is a really good fit. For the most part, to be honest, um, most of my talent comes into me by referral. The vast, like 90% of the talent that come to me via referrals. And I think a lot of people recognize what's in demand right now. They see what's on television, they see what's in commercials, and they just kind of know and they refer. And so my roster, my diversity has been building. I think it's also posted on my Facebook page. Like, I'm specifically looking for African American, Hispanic, and Asian talent. So that's part of it. It's like right there,
Yeah.
pinned to my Facebook page as well. But my referrals have been honestly far more effective than my own recruiting. And, when I feel like I've got, say, I get somebody, a Caucasian talent in that is, okay. If I feel like their category that they're in is already oversaturated, I just let them know, like, hey, I can't be the agent for you because I already have 5 other people that are very similar to you. And so that's the best way to balance it, is just to be honest with people instead of, being a jerk and just not getting back to them. I try to just let people know, like, hey, I just don't think you're a good fit for me right now. Maybe check back in a year, but I don't want to oversaturate. I don't want to take jobs away from the other folks that are already on my team to bring somebody on that's going to just compete directly with the number of people that are in the same category.
What can you share a success story of a talent you discovered and how they've grown under your guidance?
Yeah, probably the best way to do that, I won't say necessarily that I discovered, because like I said, I don't do a lot of recruiting directly in that way. I don't go to the mall and hand out flyers and say, I'm going to make you famous, kid. Right? That would be discovered in my mind in kind of the shady
Yes.
agent way. But yeah, I've had some really great success stories. A great example back when many of my relationships, my greatest successes, go way back beyond the last 3 years, deep into my previous agency. And one of the talent that came to us kind of new at that time, some theater background, a good actor, like knew their acting, but was new to the agent thing, new to the commercial thing, industrial, on camera was all kind of whoa. Came to us, wanted to expand. And at that point in time, that actor had really bonded with the owner of the agency. And so this was 12 years ago. I was kind of new, just really getting grounded in knowing the business and understanding how things worked. And so they joined on and were fairly successful. Again, it was a minority talent in an age category that had very little competition. They were very good. So I'm not saying this was just my doing or the agency's doing. It was a very good actor that put in the work as well. But anyway, so over time, they started to have a lot of success. Booking this, booking that, booking film, booking commercial, just across the board. And as the owner of that agency was kind of stepping back, this actor really had a hard time letting go of the fact that their person was the owner of the company, and recognizing that I was actually the agent that was doing all the work, because the owner of the company at that point was no longer actively involved in the agent process at all, not submitting, not dealing with any of that stuff. So email, all had my name on it. Yet this actor just really, really struggled to emotionally recognize that I was the one that was their agent. Took almost 5 years until they finally were like, well, okay, I guess I'll call you my agent. I guess I recognize that the owner hasn't been involved in my journey for 4 years now. So it was a
Yeah.
long, long journey. So 5 years in, they finally acknowledged that I was their agent. Another 5 years at that agency, and they had been really, really clicking along, doing well. Then comes ZT Agency. At that point, we had solidified our own relationship. And when I started ZT Agency, this actor came on board with me immediately. They were actually the very first job that I booked as my own new company. And the check that you see on the wall behind me is actually the check from that very first job that I booked as ZT Agency with this one specific talent. So over
Wow.
time, things grew. In 2021, I think 2021, 2022, this actor got to a point they had been preparing for 3 to 5 years to make the move to LA. They've been taking classes, they've been saving money, they've been making connections. And this actor packed up and moved down to LA. And over the last 3 years, got an agent, has been very successful auditioning for film, auditioning for television, booking commercial work, and still working with me, flying back to the Northwest when they book work here, come back for a weekend, boom, 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 do a quick job here, fly back down to LA. They're training down in LA, and they've just been extremely, extremely successful, making a transition from working a full-time job and doing some theater on the side to full-time actor working in LA at this point in time. And
Thanks.
smooth transition, well planned, well thought out. We consulted a lot of times, like, okay, let me review the plan with you again. Is this correct? This is what we want to do. Do we want to make adjustments? And we did that together over a period of time, and they have been very, very successful.
Are you stuck in this location, Pacific Northwest? Like, if there's someone that moves to the East Coast and finds a gig over there, can you still rep them?
Yeah, I have most of my talent are here in the Northwest, just because it's easy, right? If there's a shoot in Seattle and I'm dealing with talent that are within 50 miles or 100 miles of Seattle, it's very easy. I can just assume everyone's going to get there. It's not going to be a problem. But I do rep talent. I have talent in LA that were in the Northwest and moved to LA, but keep me on as their local representation. Those people are easy because I know they have family and relationships in the Northwest. If I book them a job on a Wednesday, um, they can fly in, they can stay with mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, friend, crash on the couch, go do the job, hop on a plane, fly back down to LA, no problem. I have some talent kind of spread around the country in similar situations as well. But for people that have no connections here to the Northwest, it's much more difficult, because now we get into they need to pay for airfare, hotel, Uber. The cost of doing business is much higher for somebody that's not familiar, that doesn't have relationships here. And so I'm very picky about bringing on talent that are physically located outside this area, that have no direct connection to this area.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I also can and sometimes do submit Northwest based actors to jobs outside of the Northwest. And that comes down to an ROI thing. A lot of jobs that I get that say make up a job, it's shooting in San Antonio, Texas, and they're hiring, 3 actors for a commercial. So if I see that casting here in the Northwest, why am I seeing it? Well, either it was specifically released to just the Northwest for a specific reason, or it was specifically, unspecifically released to the entire country. But it's one or the other. It was either released just here or it was released everywhere, because obviously we're not in San Antonio. Now, if I was in San Antonio, I would assume it was only released in San Antonio for actors that are in San Antonio, but we're in Seattle. So I got to look at this and say, well, is there a reason that they would specifically and only release it to the Northwest? Generally, no. Every now and then there's some weird little glitch reason why they're like, we really want to hire for someone from Seattle because the producer's office is in Seattle, even though we're shooting in San Antonio. So we want to hold in-person callbacks in Seattle, and we're going to travel everybody. Happens. Most of the time, it's released to the entire country. 800 agents, each agent submitting 10 or 15 people to each role. 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 submissions. That person, they're doing self-tapes. They might call in 100 people to do self-tapes. And then only 1 or 2 or 3 people will be booked out of that 12,000 people. If I see that, I'm not going to waste my time. Now, if it's like we're looking for a one-legged Korean female between the age of 21 and 23 that has one blue eye and one green eye, and I have
Yes.
that person on my roster, I'm
Yeah.
like, submit. And I don't care
Yeah.
if the job went out to the entire planet. I will
Yeah.
submit on that job because it's such a niche that if
Right.
I know I've got somebody that is a very unique fit to a very unique role, I will submit on something even if it was released everywhere, because I know there's a much better chance that they're going to book. I just don't waste my time or my actors' times when I know there's a job that has like 10,000 submissions. I don't want someone wasting an hour filming and editing a self-tape to upload, thinking, oh, I've got such a great shot on this cool thing in San Antonio, and then like no word back whatsoever.
Yeah.
So again, I always look at the math. What are the odds of booking this job? What is the return on investment of my time, my actor's time? And I have on those unique jobs where they were looking for a very specific thing, and I just happened to have somebody with those specific requirements. I've booked some 1 in 10,000 kind of jobs, some really wild jobs where people did end up
Interesting.
traveling significant distances for huge amounts of money based on some niche skill or niche
Yeah.
look or niche something.
Nice.
So that's the geography thing. It's kind of, there's two sides of it, and it's kind of tough to understand. But once you do it for a while, you can look at a job and very rapidly go, does this make sense? Is it worth my time? Is it worth my actors' times? And that way I'm not constantly wasting people's times with garbage auditions, which is
Yeah.
common in our business. Very
Yeah.
common.
Well, ROI is really good. What we're gonna wrap this up.
Yeah.
Dock the ship. Do actors have to audition for you to get you to represent them?
So my process for interviewing and bringing people on board, I have an application page on my website. You go to ztagency.com. In the top right corner, there's a contact button, drop down menu, application for actors. There's some information on that, and basically, I want to see your resume. I want to see your photos. Tell me a little about you, where you heard about. If you heard about ZT Agency through this interview, then definitely put that in as a referral so I know. Um, and then you just reach out to me if I'm interested in working with you, which I try to get back to everybody. But again, sometimes we get a tsunami wave of stuff coming in, and I just can't do it. But generally, I'll get back to every actor at some point within 3 to 7 days. And I try to set up an actual Zoom meeting. So I don't really do in-person meetings because people are all over and traffic's a pain in the butt. And Zoom meetings, people are doing self-tapes and Zoom callbacks. It's actually the perfect format to get to know people because it's the same format that my casting directors are going to meet them in.
Yeah.
So I set up Zoom meetings. I do not audition actors. I can tell from a resume if somebody is a good actor or not a good actor. I can tell from a resume if somebody is committed to doing the work and committed to training or not. All I want to do is get to know people. And so my interview is much more like a chat. I want to know what your life looks like. I want to know what your availability looks like. I want to know what your goals for the next 3 to 5 years are, because I'm not an agent that does this for 6 month relationships. Oh, we'll try it out for 3 months and see what happens. When I sign somebody on my team, I'm looking for a multi-year relationship where I can do my best to get you out there and sometimes, often, make some adjustments, make some tweaks. Maybe we got to change a look or a style, or like, ooh, the headshots you just paid $400 for are not very good. So we need to, let's try this or this style, this outfit. Sometimes people need to shape up their training a little. They need to work on focusing in a certain specific area. And then all of a sudden they start to bloom. And that's my goal, is to be with somebody long enough that we can tweak what we need to tweak and not just be like either you book the first job you audition for or not. So that's kind of my process. I usually spend 30 to 40 minutes chatting with people, really getting to know them. And then if I think you're a good fit for the team, I'll make you an offer right then and there on the Zoom call. And if I don't think you're a good fit for the team, then I will definitely let you know that. I'm not shy. And again, it's just return on investment. I don't think, if I don't think somebody's a good fit, it's because we're both not going to get positive benefits out of the relationship. It's not because I don't necessarily like people, though. Sometimes I don't like people. I'm like, I just don't like this person. Um, I mean, I'll be very honest. I got in this business and work as an agent, and the greatest thing about it is I only have to work with people that I like. I've always said that from my previous agency to now. I do not ever have to work with somebody that I don't like. And that's one of the most brilliant things about doing what I do, having my own company, my own agency. I never get forced to work with somebody that I don't like.
And I
So
assume your talent likes you too, so it goes both
I
ways.
would assume. I would assume. I'm an interesting agency. Um, I don't have a contract. So, like I said, some agencies want to lock you in and take a commission
Yeah.
and have you sign away, 5 year term or 2 year term. I don't have a contract at all. I'm still old school handshake agent. I know my stuff. It's not that I couldn't write a contract or can't come up with a contract or don't understand contract. I know my stuff very well. But I personally don't like the idea of contracts with agents, because the only reason an agent has a contract is to lock an actor in from leaving who is unhappy with their services. It's really the only reason. If an actor is unhappy with our relationship, either what I'm doing or the way we communicate, I would prefer that they are able to walk away at any point versus being stuck on the team by legal threat.
Yeah.
Because if someone is stuck on the team because of a legal threat that they can't leave, what are they going to do? They're going to be mad. They're going to go around. They're going to say stuff. And that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see
Yeah.
holding someone on the team that doesn't want to be here. And so, again, right now, every single actor I have on my team is here because they want to be here. They work with me because they, I assume, like working with me, or like the results at least.
That's awesome, Bob. Okay, what's your favorite tech?
Well, I tell you what, I right now I am kind of digging this whole Zoom conference thing. So since post COVID, being able to video chat with people, and it's not just
Yes.
actors now. Now I pop on with producers, I pop on with directors, ad agents. Like, we can pop on and actually be able to see people face to face in a way
Yeah.
that it used to be phone call, phone call, phone call, phone call. That is really pretty darn amazing
Technology. How do you feel
technology
about AI?
when it works. Oh, AI, that could take us out for another hour if you wanted to go deep on that.
One
So
sentence. One sentence. See if you can do it in one sentence.
I believe that we are not yet at a place where AI is a threat to the entire industry, but it will be and already is nibbling away at the easiest and most low budget aspects of the commercial side of our business. Was
That's a
that
good
that was one
sentence.
sentence? A lot of
That
commas.
was good. That was good. That was good. I mean, it's very straight to the point. How can people reach you? What's the best way?
Best way is probably access through my website, www.ztagency.com. Like I said, there is contact form for the production and casting side. There are application forms for actors that are interested. And there is my email address is on there somewhere, booking@ztagency.com if you just have a general question. That's
Yes.
probably the best way. ZT Agency is on X. ZT Agency is on Facebook, though I am not very good at updating either one of those social media. I should be. I'll post this interview when it comes out, but I am on there. It's not a great way to get in touch, but it is a good way to see the history of what's been going on with ZT Agency. And I try to post general information for actors, classes that are coming up, interesting tidbits, and that sort of thing.
Thank you, Bob. I think this is going to be great. I think the title of this episode is going to be Unveiling the Secrets.
I love it. I love it. Behind the curtain, unveiling the
That's
secrets
right.
of talent
That's right.
agents. The secret is there's no secret. Awesome.
That's right. I thank you so much for your time. I thank you
Thanks a bunch.
for having a conversation with us and really kind of breaking it down and actually just getting to know you as well. I think it's important for people to know if they're going to be if you're going to be their agent,
Yeah.
that you're a nice guy. You're easy to talk to. You're very direct. You're not going to flowery conversations. You're just going to go, hey, this is how it is.
I am a Midwesterner at heart. I am from the Midwest. I'm not actually a West Coaster. So I do tend to be more blunt and more straightforward. And sometimes that shocks people a little bit. My ways have mellowed much since I moved here. But yeah, I tend to be pretty straightforward and just say what I'm thinking and say what I'm feeling
It's
most
the
of the
best way to
time.
do
But
it.
it's also not flowered speech, and I'm not gonna lead somebody in the wrong direction because I'm afraid to hurt their feelings. I will tell them what needs to happen.
Well, we appreciate it.
It has
Thank you
been a
so
pleasure,
much.
sir, and have a great week.
You too. How much is that?